another example of a symbol. Like what is a price? Like,
oh, this is great. This is I've been
it has no mass.
I've been doing this on the UBI thing for some time now, actually, because prices or currency for that matter, you know, when I hear UBI, what goes through my mind, symbolization wise, is ancient people in line for bread for a family of four, or even in Venezuela now, because ultimately UBI is the same thing, in my opinion, as what currency was before we had a U.S. Treasury, and thousands of years before then.
Do you know who invented coins?
I don't.
King Croesus. Croesus. You know King Croesus?
Um,
I
I
misspelled his
I
name.
do not know who that is actually, which I am disappointed in myself for not knowing the historical figure.
He was the king of Lydia.
Okay.
He invented coins. He invented little pieces of metal that represented other money for use in trade. Guess what else he invented?
What's that?
Just guess.
Oh man, slavery. I'm just kidding. And what's that?
No, like ants invented slavery. Ants enslaved
Yeah,
humans.
yeah, that was a horrible guess. So coins and what else? I don't know. That's my best guess, and it's bad.
So he was the king. He's the head of the government. He's invented this new technology for money. What's the next obvious step for the guy who's in charge of the government?
Something to back it with, like a treasury.
No, the other way around.
A market.
Nope.
I'm not catching it.
He invented inflation.
Ah, gotcha.
He invented coins, and then he turned around and invented monetary policy, and then he invented fucking up the economy for monetary policy.
Because obviously you can then print more coins. Wow, very interesting.
Croesus of Lydia is one of the guys who Cicero cited when he talked about the moral decay caused by currency deflation. And part of the reason that currency and money are difficult is because of that reification error. Because money is an abstract representation of effort, an abstract representation of energy. And it's real easy to just say fuck it and not give a fuck because it's just a symbol.
Yep.
And when they inflate the shit out of it, it makes the symbol relatively valueless compared to the thing it's supposed to be talking about. It's easier to go that way.
Yep.
By the way, you talk about the UBI. Back in ancient Athens, they had like a welfare system. It was like a dormitory where you could go and you could live there, and they'd feed you. You know, it wasn't great food, but you know, you weren't gonna die, right?
Yeah.
You get your 2 or 3 squares. Now, do you know the story of Socrates, the original cannibal troll?
Well, I do know quite a bit about Socrates, but what you're referring to, I'm not sure.
Well, you know, the Delphic Oracle said he was the wisest guy in the land, right?
Yeah.
Someone said, hey, who's the smartest guy around? The Delphic Oracle, a 15-year-old girl who regularly inhaled volcanic poisons, said it was Socrates. So naturally, everybody believed her. And Socrates was like, what, me? Who, me? I'm the one who knows. I'm old enough now to know that everybody's full of shit, including me. Are you kidding me? Yeah, exactly. That's why you're smarter. He's like, no, that's not how this works. That's not how any of this works. And he like ran around town, and you know he saw these guys fishing, and they're like feeding themselves and their family, and they got a pretty nice house. He's got to know some shit. Let's ask him. Hey man, what's justice? He's like, well, justice is when everybody gets what they deserve. Yeah, but what's it mean to deserve something? Well, I mean, when you deserve it, and the guy's like, you know what? I got to get some shit done. Will you get the fuck out of here? And Socrates had basically the same experience with the carpenter and the blacksmith and the kid shoveling out the stalls and everybody else. And they said, you know what? You're a fucking annoying dick. Get the fuck out of here. And they actually brought him up on charges.
Wow.
The official charge was being a gadfly, which is basically ancient Athens for troll.
That's what.
Now in Athens,
it was a what?
A direct democracy.
Yeah.
Which means the women and the slaves and the kids can go fuck themselves, but all the old like white guys who own property would gather and decide what the rules were.
Gotcha.
And so the legislative process
Does not sound right and like anything I've ever heard at all. I'm just kidding.
Well, the legislative process is when somebody would come to all the property owners and say, "Hey, here's what I think the law should be." Right.
Yeah.
So Socrates was brought up on charges, and the way their system worked was they'd make their arguments, and then the prosecutor would say what he thinks the punishment should be, and the defender would say what he thinks the punishment should be, and then they'd vote on which one it was. And since and that sort of system often created an incentive for moderation, because if you said something ridiculous, then the other guy would say something pretty reasonable, and they'd pick him.
Yeah.
So it kept you from being like crazy bullshit, right?
Yeah.
Well, they said, Socrates is hassling these people about stupid shit. He's a homeless guy. He's been hanging around with our sons and probably fucking them in the ass, talking medical ideas about the powers that be. Yeah, fuck him. He's a dickhead.
Yeah. So basically, you have this power or the structure of some sort in there, and then this Socrates person who's effectively trolling it.
Socrates is homeless and charming and had the attention and time of the sons of the aristocracy, and the aristocracy didn't like it. Official charge was doing, and they said that, and Socrates said, well, actually, by raising awareness about the deficits of society, I'm doing everybody a favor, and so the proper punishment for me would be to give me the rest of my life at the dormitory with free food. And the prosecutors are like, are you fucking kidding me? You know what? Your punishment should be death, you motherfucker.
Oh, man.
And so they gave him death. And the sons of the aristocracy showed up that night and paid off the jailer. The jailer gets like $300 a week. We can pay him off for nothing.
Yeah.
Because these guys like Socrates, right? Socrates is a charmer.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And Socrates is like, no, I'm not gonna go exile to Sicily or some shit like that. Like, why not? And he says, I've lived by the rules of the society for 70 years. If they decide that I should die, who am I to question that?
Wow.
That was basically what he said. The theory is he knew that he was old and decrepit, and he kind of liked the idea of going out with a dramatic bang, as opposed to just dying in the gutter after, being drunk and having more fun with the stuff.
That might be the best assisted suicide story I've heard in my entire life. That's.
Yeah, he knew he was old and decrepit. You see what happens to old and decrepit guys. This is the way to go out with a bang, and a hero to the up and coming. Yeah, it was a beautiful story.
Yeah, and also the irony always, this is the ignorance of always killing your opponent over an ideological mindset. You always just create more of it when you do that. And so it's one of those paradoxes. And so by killing Socrates, you effectively make more versions of Socrates.
And you know what? Death in the world, the Germanic world, and the Greeks were big into their drama. Like they saw their ancient myths and their Germanic works as critical to humankind and the human soul.
Yeah.
And so that kind of going out with a bang, making a statement, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
That really carries a lot of weight. Or at least it did then, and obviously it did for us because it echoes down to us, doesn't it?
I would say. And
right, here's the horrible part. You ready?
Yep.
Plato may have invented Socrates. He might not even exist.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Right. So we got this great idea of Socrates, and
Is it?
Maybe there's nothing there.
Well, hold on. This actually, I'm about to hit a level of depth on this exact concept here. Keep this drawing up, because a line I've used before, quote, I don't know if I heard it somewhere, just said it off the top of my head and remembered it, but the difference between fictional authors and liars is that fictional authors create fiction to tell truth, while liars take truth and create fiction. And when you talk about Socrates, right? There's so much truth with Socrates, even if all he is a fictional story. And there, I would say Orwell, maybe my favorite author from that perspective. When you talk about like 1984 and Animal Farm, he created absolute truths from his fictions, whereas a liar will create a fiction out of a truth.
That's right. They'll take a half truth and twist it.
Yep.
That's very interesting. Did we ever talk about the three kinds of lies?
I don't think we did.
Let's talk about that. Maybe this would be a good way to finish up. There's basically three kinds of lies. There's when you know it's false and you claim it's true. Right? If I know that I own stations and I'm telling you I own 6, it's definitely not right.
Yeah.
That's commission, right?
Yep.
And basically, everybody says that's wrong. Like, no good argument can be made from that. Most moral systems say it's wrong to deliberately lie.
Yeah, an intentional falsehood to mask what you know to be true.
Yeah, exactly. Like, there's no situation where this really serves much.
Very, very, very extraordinarily limited. I think people have empathy, but I don't think there's many situations, if any, that people are like, yeah, but it was okay, you did it. Most people are like, you still should have told the truth. I understand why you did it, but you still should have told the truth.
Yep. And then now the second type is not reporting the truth. It's a lie by omission.
Oh yeah.
And there's lots of situations where this is fine. Like, lots of people think that price negotiation. I don't care how relevant my desperation is to that guy. He doesn't need to know.
Yeah, correct. So context is important here. I would actually say that two can be. Two is where you find a lot of the manipulation at.
For sure. And to be fair, if we're talking about like business partners or romantic partners or family, lying by omission is not really cool. Yep. Lying by omission is defined as not telling the truth when you know it's relevant.
Right. Exactly. That.
I didn't tell you, for example, that the sun is 900 times the size of the Earth. But who fucking cares?
Well, you can think of times when you're being interviewed by police, you would not lies by omission to make sure that they're not going to try to misrepresent you perfectly. Minimal truths at times are perfectly good.
Lies by omission are recommended by all lawyers.
Yes, and yeah, lies by omission. In fact,
my lawyer advises me that number 2 is fine in every legal situation. But if we're talking about talking to your mom or your dad or your children or your lover or your wife or your brother, not tell them stuff that you know is relevant, that's kind of the dick move.
And in fact, oftentimes it will have a more negative consequence than number 1 because we all say stupid shit.
They expect you to know when it's relevant. All right, and then the third type of lie is bullshit.
Now this, I'm gonna take a stab before you explain your definition on. I would say that this is where you take something and you might know it's not true. You might not know it's not true. You might think it's true without knowledge, or you just have no clue at all, but you speak to it as if you do.
No, that's that might actually be because you're not sure. We might call that puffery.
Okay.
Right, where maybe it's bullshit, maybe it's not. Bullshit is when you know it's false. Like Harry Potter.
Yeah.
Like when Trump talks about how great his casinos are doing. when anybody on CBS talks about their product after 11:30 at night.
Exactly.
It's and that's not fair. To be fair, a lot of people hawking stuff are telling you great.
Well, let's say that. So basically, if you want to see a place in the world where this actually is a profession, and I mean in a positive way, every Hollywood actor is performing bullshit.
That's right. All fiction. Like, I gotta make sure this is 100% clear, because I don't want to bring along a moral component that doesn't exist.
Right.
Fully 85% of every word ever written in human history falls in category 3.
Yeah.
All the fictional stories, a shitload of the newspaper reports, a shitload of the biographies, all the parables, most of the gossip. Yeah, like 85% of every word ever written in human history falls under bullshit that we all know isn't really true.
Yeah.
Or that you shouldn't rely on one way or the other.
Yep.
But notice that which one of these it is depends upon that connection between the symbol and the reality. In the first case, the symbol points at the wrong reality. In the second case, the symbol doesn't point at the reality. In the third case, the symbol doesn't even point at reality. We know it doesn't point at reality. It's got nothing to do with reality.
Yeah.
Nobody reads Harry Potter and thinks we're going to make a judgment about English politics.
Right.
It's a fucking story.
Exactly. And that's exactly right. And then within the story, people procure different truths out of it, and this is where some reification errors will occur. People will assign incorrect symbolization to different. I wonder how many debates occur on reification errors for something like the Harry Potter movies. You know what I mean? The different symbolizations.
That's a different story. In fact, let's talk about that. And I'm going to use a completely different story. Are you familiar with the theory about the Wizard of Oz?
I guess not.
All right, so there's a symbol and there's a reality, right?
Yeah.
All right, let's do the gold brick road. The gold brick road. Follow the yellow brick road.
Yeah.
Sorry. I gave away the game. The reality in that story is the gold standard. The Tin Man and the Straw Man.
We have a lot of those in our group.
You know what the Tin Man and the Straw Man represent?
I do in psychological arguments, but not in here.
In the story of it's an ancient story. It's like an allegorical story. You know what? And these stories, for some reason, they just like, and I think the reason why is because they line up so well with the reality that they stick.
Yeah.
And it's that parallel reification or that parallel connection between the symbol and the reality that makes them stick.